And now we got Ohio State, Tennessee. That's going to be a big one right there. I mean, Ryan Day, people have been saying, is he getting fired? Is he not getting fired? I don't think he's getting fired. I'm thinking more like a hot seat for 2025.
So the Ohio State athletic director, Ross Bjork, came out and said he likes Ryan Day. He's all in on Ryan Day. He wants him to stay. All that stuff that an athletic director should say, right? Imagine a lot of people are kind of reacting to that. I'm like, well, imagine if Ross Bjork says before a playoff game at home, said, gee, I don't know about this Ryan Day guy. That would not put out a very positive outlook on this team or this program. So of course he's going to say what he's going to say. But I throw out a scenario to somebody else. What if Tennessee goes into Ohio Stadium, according to Apple Maps, Neyland North? What if they go into Neyland North, so to speak, and let's say they win 28-10, and Ohio State just, maybe it's a little bit of a carbon copy of that Michigan game, and they just don't do very well, and Tennessee goes into there and they beat them by at least a couple of scores. So they're 10-3. They're coming off losses to Michigan, who ended up being 7-5, of course, at the end of the year. They lose to a good Tennessee team, but they lose handily. I'm curious, and we know what the fan base is. Like the Ohio State fan base is insane. Like they have you just look at Ohio State year after year after year. Teams like Michigan, right, is a great example, right? Who's certainly coming off of a high for winning 3 Big Ten titles, a national championship. What happened this year? They had a down year, right? Their coach left, bunch of players, good players left to the NFL, all that stuff. Okay, it makes sense that you'd have a down year, right? Michigan, had success towards the end of the Lloyd Carr era, right? Great 2006 team. You had Chad Henne, you had Mike Hart, and some of those guys, and you had a high. Michigan came down. Now, of course, they made a bad hire with Rich Rodriguez over there, but Michigan has had their ups. They've had all these programs have had their ups and downs. Ohio State hasn't. And I think that's why the fan base is where they're at. A lot of people sit around and they say, man, those are Ohio State fans. They're crazy that they're going to fire a head coach after winning 10 games, but that's all they've done. That's all they're used to. I mean, I'm curious. I mean, you might know better than I am. Where are the Alabama fans thinking after losing 3 games this season? Now it's 1 year.
Some of us have thrown the baby out with the bathwater. Like, because I remember getting my hair done the day after we lost to Vandy. They were like, Nick Saban wouldn't have done that. Nick Saban wouldn't have done, which, I mean, I was like, duh. It's obviously a lot of those people screaming that are not spending all their time and days, staying up late, spending all morning, all day on college football, even in the off season. It's like, it's obvious, like people saying that are obviously not keeping up with it. They're not up to date on it. Obviously, they're not looking at the press conferences. They're not looking at YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, or any social media link, or watching everything they can find on their team.
Yeah, that's a tough situation for teams that have been this, especially in the super conference era now. Of course, you guys down in the SEC, of course, with Texas coming in there and being very successful in year one. We'll see if Oklahoma can be successful as more time certainly goes by. And especially with the elimination of divisions, you're playing better teams more often. So you're gonna have some of these teams are going to have some of these seasons, right, where you're not able to rattle off 10 and 11 and 12 wins every single year. Ohio State is certainly in that same boat. But I think where the frustration comes is everybody talks about the $20 million roster for the Buckeyes this season, and they did invest a lot of money. And they invested a lot of money. Their coaching staff too, bringing in Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator, and they invested that money to beat Michigan. That did not work out. And then maybe to win a Big Ten championship. That did not work out, not getting to that game in the first place. All they got left is the national championship. So as it pertains to this Ohio State-Tennessee matchup, we could break down offense, defense, special teams. But for me, it's all between the ears. Where is the mentality of this team coming off of that loss to Michigan? Now, there's a couple of schools of thought with this. And really, how this team comes out is really going to tell me a lot about Ryan Day and how he can get this team refocused. But there's a couple of schools of thought. Excuse me. Okay, so you got 3 weeks between this Michigan game and this Tennessee game. School of thought number one: the Michigan game has lingered in the heads of this program. Ryan Day has been able to post whatever on the bulletin board, whatever on the wall, and motivate this team, so they're going to be coming out like a bunch of wild dogs, and they've been able to, all they've thought about for 3 weeks is Michigan loss, Michigan loss, Michigan loss, Michigan loss, and that's all they've certainly thought about. So it can motivate them certainly a little bit more, but there's another side of this as well, where all you've been able to think about is Michigan and Michigan and Michigan and what has happened. And now all of a sudden that's kind of has taken up most of your mind. And will they be able to put this game behind them? Is 3 weeks enough time for this team to put that behind them? Or is Ryan Day continuing to harp on it? And are they going to let Michigan beat them twice? Right, is a common phrase that you kind of hear as well. So I'm very curious. I would love to be a fly on the wall in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center just to be able to see how Ryan Day is taking this bad thing that happened and how he's framing it these 3 weeks, certainly in the preparation. So I think we're going to find out very early. I think we're going to find out like in the first half of the first quarter, right? Those first 7.5 minutes. I think we're going to find out what type of Ohio State team this is, because what do we know? We know when they're playing at their best, and they're not playing Michigan, right? When they're not playing Michigan, right? They only lost 1 game, 1 point to the number 1 team in the country, undefeated, Oregon Ducks. So they're a great football team. We know that already, but man, missed something about Michigan. There is some mental block, certainly when it comes to that. But and I said this on my preview. I'm like, the worst thing I think that could happen, can we circle back to that Ohio State fan base and how rabid and maybe their feelings right now about Ryan Day. The worst thing that could happen, say they get the ball first in this scenario. They go 3 and out, and then Tennessee gets the ball and scores a touchdown. Well, how do you think the Ohio State fans are going to be reacting after that first 6 or 7 minutes? Probably not great. All of a sudden, maybe now this perceived advantage, maybe you hear a little bit of boo birds and maybe you hear a little bit of a frustration. And now that's kind of seeping back into the heads of this Ohio State team. So for me, the first thing is all mental. But you kind of look at Tennessee and, if Big Ten fans are kind of, hey, obviously maybe we haven't watched Tennessee a lot, and then they might be thinking, wait, a couple of years ago, wasn't that the team that had Hendon Hooker and they were throwing it around a lot, and they were dumping the goalposts in the Tennessee River after finally beating Alabama and all that stuff? And they were pretty explosive, weren't they? Well, I mean, Nico Maliava can certainly sling the football down the field. He's very talented, but this is a team that, man, they're built on the run game. They're built on defense. Dylan Sampson lead the SEC in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. He's been great. So Ohio State's defensive front, you got to think, is going to be tested against him. So we'll see if Tennessee can run the football effectively. And then Tennessee's defense. These are 2 of the top 4 total defenses in the country this season, right? This is going to be, I think, a low-scoring defensive matchup. Now, Ohio State, of course, does not have their starting center, Seth McLaughlin. They don't have their starting left tackle, Josh Simmons. He was injured in the middle of the season, out for the entire year. So this is a little bit of a patchwork kind of guys moving around, musical chairs type of offensive line. And this is a really good Tennessee defensive front. That's the big key for me. Can Ohio State, can their offensive line keep this pass rush, keep this defensive front at bay? I think that's maybe going to determine which way this game sways in the end.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, you get through that Ohio State offensive line, you're really good to go. I mean, because like Tennessee, I don't really think anybody's really expecting a natty. They want to see like a playoff win.
Sure.
Yeah, because like I don't think they're gonna gripe too much at Josh Heupel. They're gonna be like, you know what, you're leading us to victory against Alabama.
Right.
Why?
Yeah. He's sitting in a great spot. I think he's done a really good job since taking over there. Obviously, they've been able to recruit really well with a guy like Nico coming in at quarterback. And I think he continues to develop and certainly get better. And that's another thing that when Ohio State sometimes has struggled against the pass, it's been when teams have attacked these corners. Oregon was able to do it. Now Oregon has the best weapons in the country, right? So that needs to be kind of taken into consideration, certainly. But look at that. I mean, I know it was only one drive, but look at that drive against Indiana. They were attacking Davis and Igbinosun and Denzel Burke, specifically Igbinosun, who's one of the most penalized corners in the entire country. So there's an opportunity maybe for Tennessee to certainly attack that in that game. And what do they got? Dante Thornton out there, McCoy, Squirrel White as well on the perimeter. So I'm excited to see that matchup. Ohio State's got to be ready to play. They got to be ready. If they're not mentally ready to play, I think Tennessee can go in there and get it done. But I think it's going to be a low scoring, maybe a little bit of a slugfest. Which defense is going to have that lapse? Which offense is going to be able to make a big play down the field could be a difference in this game late in the game.
There we go.